Welcome, everyone, to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we're your hosts, Beth
and Bridget Corns.
And today we're going to be riffing on change. With the new year coming up soon, it's something that I start thinking about, even though I don't subscribe to New Year's, what is it? Resolutions. I've even forgotten what the thing is. Like, it's so like, I'm like, I want to be open to changing anytime, not just on a certain start date, right? But having said that, I'm not going to pretend like change doesn't require something of me, that it's effortless, right? And so we've been talking recently about this change, and just want to kind of talk a little bit more with you about that. Bridget, what do you want to say about this topic?
Okay, so I'm just going to preface this by saying that I am the type of individual who thrives on change. And so I'm coming from a perspective of someone who has continually transmuted different situations or personality traits throughout my life by choice and has enjoyed that transformation. Whereas I know that change is a topic that can be daunting and just downright scary for some people. So where I'm coming from is a place of seeking continual growth and transformation. But when you brought up this topic, what struck me was the fact that oftentimes what people view as changing who they are is not actually a change at all. It's adding layers, it's gaining wisdom and experience, and ultimately it's something that enriches them, not something that changes them.
Well, and as you're talking, it reminds me. So I was looking at this post earlier today, and somebody had said that one of the most difficult things about growing older is that they have to change who they are. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, people are really adverse. We people are really adverse to change. And I was like, is that true? Like with because it's just a random person making just a comment, right? Just like us.
Yeah.
And so I was like, but is that true? Is it that people really are that adverse that they don't want to change who they are? And is it really changing who they are? Like, is it really changing the core or the essence of who they are? Just because we adjust and grow and prune and make upgrades doesn't mean the essence of who we are has really changed. So I feel like sometimes our mindset or what we are calling changing who we are makes it scarier than what it actually is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also like when you were talking about how you're eager with change, I would say I'm open to changing. But as you were talking, I was thinking about when this whole thing started. Like, I've always been willing to look at myself and grow and prune and been interested in alleviating suffering inside myself where there is suffering.
Mm.
But it all, like when I had that big burst of major change in 2018, this was my stance. I was just exhausted. Stuff wasn't working. There was something inside me that I was like, oh, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. So there was something that I was being asked to change to do that I wasn't. And then it got to a point where I was so depleted because I was resisting change. And the energy that was expended from resisting change caused me to shut down. It was like some deep, wise part of me knew you have to change. And I'm just going to shut you down
Mm.
so that you can come to that realization. But when I got there, this was my stance. Head down, disappointed, dejected. I failed. I have to go in a new direction, even though I know I want to go in this direction. It's fascinating to me because
Mm.
I feel like it's representative of what my fellow humans are going through. That even though we know we want to do something, we will fight against it with our good enough life
Mm.
and then see it as failure or some be dejected when we're being thrust in a new direction because we know we can't keep going in this direction.
Mm.
What does that bring up for you?
That's really interesting. I'm just thinking about the major shift that I went through around the same time, and trying to think of like what posture stance I had then. Um, and I guess there's a bit of a similarity. Like I knew that where I was working at the time, I knew that I loved the students who I worked with. I knew that I was passionate about the subject that I was teaching. But I also knew, like, I get to these points, and I guess the best way to describe it is like when you see like a snake shed its skin or a hermit crab change its shell, or like in nature we see this over and over where it's just a natural progression, like when an animal grows out of its current container, it just it just goes to the next one. It's just a natural, it's just
Yeah.
so easy and fluid. But I think that that's because there's not free will there. And I think that because we have free will, we can stay in a container that we've outgrown, even when it's really uncomfortable, because it may feel uncomfortable, but it may also be comfortable in the sense of safety and security and predictability and being good enough. What if what I have is good enough and I'm not sure that what I'm going to is better, then I'd rather hold on to the good enough because I'm surviving. It's feeding me, it's paying my bills, it's keeping me comfortable.
What came up for me when you said that, I was like, does the snake know when it sheds its skin that the new skin underneath, does it understand that it's not dying as it sheds its skin? Like when you shed your skin, do you know as a snake that you're going to be okay? And
Mm,
as a hermit crab, if you're in this shell, do you truly understand and get intuitively that there's a new shell that you're just going to fit into? Right? I feel like when I look at the hermit crab, it's a seamless transition. And it's like they get out of one, it's almost like they see the new shell and
mm.
they go, oh, that shell looks, like I don't know that there's consciousness to understand that, but there's the
Yeah.
intuitive drive to understand this is better.
Mm,
And what I'm thinking is that it feels like there's different intuitive intelligence
mhm,
between species,
mhm.
and that the species that have the highest level of intuitive intelligence are the ones that find change less disruptive.
Ooh, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so the species that have the highest intuitive intelligence find change the least disruptive because when you have this intuitive intelligence, you understand that you're going to be okay. Our
Yeah,
intuition is always guiding us towards our, like, what is seamlessly fitting into what it is that is for the highest good and what we're asking for. So our intuition is always aligned with our
Yeah.
highest good and what we're asking for, which means we're co-creating with the universe on this thing. So for a hermit crab who's like, I'm, like there's no intelligence with it, but I need a new shell. Like it's like every fiber in its being is feeling maxed out at this place.
Hmm.
So it's submitting just without intelligence, a need for more space intuitively. When it sees something else that gives it more space, it
Hmm.
doesn't have the cognition. Like I think sometimes our cognition gets in the way of us following our intuition. Our free will gets in the way.
Yes, this is exactly what I just wrote down.
Yeah. So riff on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I just what I saw was it's like um when you have a being whose mind and ego are very, very tiny or even non-existent, that intuition is the loudest and simplest path to follow. It's so clear. It's like me staring into the sun. Like, is there anything else that's as bright as this right now? No, absolutely nothing. It's really
Yeah.
obvious which way I turn to look into the sun. But when we are talking humanity, we have this mind that is screaming. We've got emotions that are on alert. We've got an ego that has its own agenda for which direction we're going to go. And all of a sudden we lose touch. That intuition never goes away, but other things become louder and brighter, and it becomes really difficult. And if we can relearn and remember the frequency and the feel of our intuition, I think that change, not that it's going to become less scary, but that we'll be able to feel into, yeah, this is definitely, like we talk about emphatic yes, this is my emphatic yes. And it will be easier to follow that. And the more that an individual hears that, responds to that, and follows that, and then maybe even documents for themselves what happens on the other side of that, the easier
Hmm.
that transitional process is going to become. And that's the
Yeah.
way that we grow and we transform and we accumulate wisdom.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I think that it's helpful to share what each of us has done to face the change,
Hmm.
acknowledging that it can be challenging, that it's not necessarily something that's effortless. There's always effort involved, right, in change, but certainly we can be in flow. And I think that's one of the things, to the point of the story that I was telling you about 2018, is that there wasn't any flow at all within it. It was my body and my mind were suppressing what my spirit was asking for,
Hmm.
which was crushing me, right? And so I think this is an important piece of it for me. What has helped me to be less resistant to change has been to invest in cultivating my intuition, because I trust wherever my intuition, like when I'm changing and I'm doing something different, even if I've never thought about it, like, there's something I'm getting ready to embark on now that I've never thought about doing, but yet it felt like an emphatic yes in the universe to do this,
Hmm.
at least for a period of time. And I was like, I'm trusting my intuition that this is an emphatic yes. This isn't a distraction. This is actually aligned in a way that I can't see or understand, because
Hmm.
everything in my body is saying yes. So for me, intuition is almost like, it's not just that the mind, body, and spirit are aligned. There is a faith that what I'm sensing or experiencing inside of me is exactly aligned with whatever it is that I'm submitting in the universe. If I'm not pushing, if I'm not making something happen, if I'm not feeling desperate or needy, and I'm literally like just genuinely putting something out there, then when my intuition comes back and says, do this, can my mind allow me to do something that doesn't make sense? Is my body willing to move forward and trust that I am loved in this answer?
Mhm.
And does my spirit have this emphatic yes? Because that's my emphatic yes is always my spirit. It's the deeper part of me. It's not just my egoic part, right?
Yeah.
It's the deeper part of me that says, oh, yeah, yeah.
What I just noticed when you were talking about that was something that I think is going to unlock a great level of understanding, not just for us, but for our listeners, which is I've noticed for myself, and something I heard you say is that the greatest steps forward in change don't come when we are seeking, which is like pushing things out, like we're pushing things out there. I'm seeking and it's efforting in a way that feels strenuous and laborious. But when we're in a space of calm receptivity, and that's like the idea of like a masculine and a feminine dichotomy here. Like a masculine would be a pushing and an efforting and a striving, but a feminine is a receptive, a calmness, an openness, and that pulls. And when you are
Mm,
open, you don't do the pulling, you create a space that naturally pulls things into that space. And then what you get to
yes.
do is you get to respond to what comes versus pushing things out there that aren't aligned.
Yeah,
Still
I
get to
like that.
respond. Yeah.
I like that receptivity. It gives me, it like reminds me of like a magnet, right? It's like
Yeah.
pulling something towards me. Like it's like, um, and I think when I think why change can be so hard too, thinking about what you just said, is we can get we can have so many different things that we want to do that it creates ambiguity inside of us, and that ambiguity is uncertainty, and that uncertainty means that we're not committed to any particular direction.
Mm.
So the moment that we take that beautiful time to just acknowledge all the things rising up inside of us, and we lay them out and we say, why this? Why this? Is it something I'm pushing or something that keeps coming to me? Is this
Mm.
something that's coming to me and I'm rejecting it? Maybe reception is what I start working on so that I can receive this beautiful thing that's coming to me, because it keeps coming up. But there seems to be some sort of stance that once we decide that this particular one change is the thing that we want to do, a road rises that we're like, it's like our job. You say this all the time. What's our job? What are the two things? The what and the
We
why.
get to determine the what and the why, not the how and the when. Yeah.
Yep. So the universe does the how and the when, and we do the what and the why. So
Mhm.
when we decide definitively what, I think sometimes change is, I want this. The what is what I have now and this new thing.
Mm.
And maybe we don't have the bandwidth for what I have now and this new thing. Like when you take a job across the country, you know you're giving up everything that you have right now. Not everything, but things change.
Mm.
Things change. You're giving up the house, you're giving up the friends, you're giving up the coworkers. Coworkers are like family. You're choosing to give this all up. So when we get really clear on the what, and when the why is wrapped in love and generosity, then it just comes rushing towards you,
Mm.
right? It just comes rushing towards you when the why is like for out here and in here. When there's that alignment, it's like the universe is like, yes, you know,
Yeah.
literally, there's like a rushing in.
I do want to also add, because so that's this beautiful shift that happens when we become receptive, but there's still a process that we have to go through. And I'm going to speak for me. The most recent major change that I had to go through was not a painless process. But because I had the perspective to understand that what I was stepping into was my better and what I was leaving was my good enough, there was so much energy and excitement and joy in the midst of some painful parts of the process. And I just want to say that for people who are facing changes that still feel scary, even when they know what they're stepping into is better, you're allowed to rewrite the script and the story of what that change is going to look like for you. You don't have to expect or accept the way that other people have said that change has gone for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point. Um, and 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 I think that I've questioned that before in the past. When I've realized that that was a possibility to do something different,
Mm,
ooh, it's scary, right? To put
mhm,
yourself out there, but it also has this interesting energy around it. When you do something that you have always done, there's anxiety because you know that it could not turn out well.
mm,
When you do something that you see other people doing, it's still like the hermit crab in the shell that doesn't quite fit. You're trying to make something fit that just doesn't quite fit.
mhm,
But when you do something new that you're like inspired and you're like, oh, that sounds spacious.
mm,
That has an energy of, wouldn't that be nice if that were true?
mhm,
Instead of sticking with the, oh no, that's not possible. It's not possible. You've already know what happens when you're choosing an alternative that you've already seen other people do. And we say to ourselves, oh, that could never happen. We already know it happens.
yeah.
Somebody else has already done it. It's actually a concept. So when you're walking into a new behavior that is a change that has been done, we can't tell ourselves anymore that this isn't possible or I can't do this, because we all do hard things. We
Mhm,
can do this. What you're really saying is, I don't want to. I'm scared. All the emotions. And so once we get that, there's freedom in that. I can't tell you how many times I've felt like, oh, I asked myself, is this true? And then I'm like, oh, actually, it's not true. Like
mhm,
that's just my initial. In writing, we always say that we have this crappy first draft, right? And so when we think about, like, that's my mind's crappy first draft is, oh, I'm
mhm,
scared. It's the
mhm,
biological organism going, I don't know what's going to happen. So this is a risk. But when we challenge it in a soft way, just by asking a simple but profound question like, is it true? And then we find out, actually, other people are doing this, and everything in me says, yes, this feels right. This feels compassionate. This feels mutually kind. This isn't just for me, the outcome, but it's something that I'm trying to give a generous gift to this person in front of me, or whatever it is, a situation, an organization, whatever it is, we're literally trying to do something from a space of kindness and generosity.
mhm,
Then when we can step into that space and give that space more time than what we do the unknown in a negative
mhm,
framework,
mhm.
we can have a different outcome. Like you said, it can be different.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got anything else with that?
I
You're like,
don't.
you're like over
No,
there.
I'm
I
just
can see.
marinating it. No, that was beautiful. I think that's just a beautiful way to wrap it up, unless you have anything else you'd want to add. All
No, I
righty
think
then.
that's great.
Well, a special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can learn more about Melissa and her work at melissamossart.com. And thank you to Cloud Cult for their song for our intro and outro music from There's So Much Energy in Us. Find out more about Cloud Cult at cloudcult.com. And to all of our listeners and viewers, we send you peace, love, and light.